Hi 7th graders, today we are going to go over 4.3's lesson. You will have a bell ringer to go with it, so go grab a bell ringer, have a seat. I'm going to help you guys with the bell ringer a little bit before you get started on it. So if you look, your job is to get the variable by itself. And these are two-step equations, so there's a few things you have to do to get the variable by itself. On number 48, you're going to have to get rid of the 4 before you can get rid of the negative 2. On 49, you're going to have to get rid of the negative 6 before you can get rid of the divide by 5. On number 50, you're going to have to distribute, then you'll have to get your x by itself. And on number 51, you're going to have to get rid of the divide by 4 before getting rid of the plus 200. Now down on 52, it says, what is the value of this plus this? Signs are different, so we subtract. You're going to need common denominators and then simply subtract it, keeping the sign of the bigger number. Go ahead and pause this video right now, finish that bell ringer, and then when you've turned in your bell ringer with your name on it, then you can come back to the video and press play. We're going to go ahead and finish or fill out, 4.3's notes. So 4.3's notes have 2 pages. There's this page and this page, so we're going to get both of those done today. The first thing we're going to do is look at what the title is. It is Solving Inequalities with Multiplication and Division. So it's basically what we were doing over here. We did a few problems with multiplication and division, I think. We did something down here. So you guys are going to do great on this. It's just like solving an actual equation. It's just that you have an inequality in it. We're going to go ahead and start at the very, very top. Go ahead and get your notes out and fill these out with me on the video. All right, first thing I want to do is ask myself, what is happening to x? X is being divided by 5, so the opposite of that would be to multiply both sides by 5. I'm going to rewrite this just so that I have everything nice and neat. I would like you guys to do the same thing. X divided by 5 is greater than negative 3. We're going to multiply both sides by 5. That will cancel that one out, which is what we want. Negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. We're not done yet. Now we need to graph it. I'm going to go to negative 15. I look and it is not an or equal to problem, so this is going to be an open circle. And then I read it from the variable. This says x is bigger than negative 15, which means I want to go anywhere that is bigger. So it's that way. All right, let's take a look over at this next one. P is being multiplied by 2/3. Remember what happens if I'm multiplying a variable by a fraction. We have to skip, flip, and multiply, or simply just multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to rewrite it just so I can keep things nice and neat. I want that initial problem to be by itself. Okay, we're going to multiply both sides by 3/2, because that's what that would be flipped, right? Multiply both sides by 3/2. Notice how I'm writing it. Did you notice how I wrote the 3 kind of in line with the 3 like this? That's because we're going to turn this negative 3 into a fraction by putting it over 1, okay? These would cancel out, and now we just simply multiply. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. 2 times 1 is 2. Negative 9 over 2 is greater than p. I'm not going to worry about reducing that right now. Let's just go ahead and graph it. Negative 9/2, open circle, read it from the variable. P is less than, P is smaller, so everything this way. Okay. Let's go down here to the next problem. 6x is greater than negative 18. I'm going to rewrite it. What's happening to x? X is being multiplied by 6, so the opposite of that would be to divide by 6. Negative 18 divided by 6 6 times 3 is 18, so this will be negative 3. Go ahead and graph it. And read it from the variable. X is bigger than negative 3, so it'll be anything that way. And notice how I used an open circle. Something that I want you guys to notice so far is that everything that I've done to both sides, for example, over here, I multiplied by 5 to both sides. On this one, I multiplied by 3/2. On this one, I divided by 6 to both sides. So far, everything that I've done to both sides has been positive, okay? So keep that in mind. Everything on this page has been positive. Last problem. 12k is less than or equal to negative 24. First, we're going to rewrite it. Now we're going to go ahead and get k by itself. K is being multiplied by 12, so the opposite would be to divide both sides by 12. That leaves me with k is less than or equal to negative 24 divided by 12 is negative 2. And we're going to go ahead and graph that. This will be a closed circle because it's an or equal to, which means it could be negative 2. And then I'm going to read it from the variable. K is smaller, so that means it's going to be anything that way. All right, once again, that last problem, we divided by a positive to both sides, so the sign didn't flip. Everything on this first page was positive numbers being multiplied or divided to both sides. The reason why I included this next section is because I wanted to give you guys some chances where that's not going to be true. So here's the second part of this lesson. Multiplying and dividing with negatives. This is when that alarm needs to be going off in your head. Boop, boop, boop. We need to flip the sign. If the number next to the variable is negative, you need to flip the sign. So if you're doing it to both sides as a negative, then the sign will flip. It's different if this number is negative. If this number is negative, that's not a big deal. It's the thing that you're doing to both sides is going to be negative. Then it'll flip. So let's go ahead and get started with this first example. I got negative 2/5 h is less than or equal to negative 8. Well, what's happening to h? It's being multiplied by a fraction. To get a fraction away from a variable, we multiply by the reciprocal. Now, the reciprocal of negative 2/5 is still going to be negative, and that's what I think a lot of people forget. So we're going to rewrite this just so that we can keep things nice and neat. Negative 2/5 h is less than or equal to negative 8. Rewrite it for me. Now we're going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal. I'm going to go ahead and change my color up real quick. Multiply this by negative 5/2. Keep that negative sign. That's going to be super important. Okay, these ones would cancel out, which is what we want. I'm left with h. But now this is where the alarm should be going off in your head. I just multiplied by a negative to both sides. So that means my sign needs to flip. Super important, okay? Now we can go do this math. Did you notice that I wrote my 5 and my 8 at the same level? That's so that I can make 8 into a fraction so I can multiply these things. Negative 8 times negative 5 is a positive 40. 1 times 2 is 2. 40 divided by 2 is the same thing as 20. So now I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it. It's h is greater than or equal to 20. Now we're going to go ahead and graph. This will be a closed circle because it's or equal to. And if we read it from the variable, it says h is bigger than 20, which means it's going to be anything this way. H is bigger. Okay, so here's what I want you guys to do. Go grab a highlighter, and I want you to highlight something for me. Highlight this negative 5/2, this negative 5/2, and then highlight this flipped sign. I want you to very clearly see that we just multiplied by a negative to both sides, and then my sign flipped, okay? I'm even going to write right here. Sign flipped. Because I multiplied by a negative to both sides. Remember guys, if I'm going ever too fast, feel free to rewind, pause, anything like that, okay? All right, let's go ahead and do the next problem. X divided by -3 is greater than 4. So we got to get x by itself. First thing I'm going to do is rewrite this so we can keep things nice and neat in our notes. Okay. To get x by itself, I have to do the opposite of what's happening. It is being divided by a -3, so the opposite of division is multiplying by a -3. Notice how I keep the sign with it. This is where the alarm should be going off in your head. Boop, 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 I am multiplying by a negative to both sides. These ones would cancel out, which is what we want, but you have to flip that sign. Now you can do this math. 4 times -3 is -12, and we're done. We can just graph it. This will be an open circle because it's not or equal to, so it can't be -12, like that's part of the answer. But then let's read it from the variable. X is smaller, so anything that way could be a possible answer. Grab that highlighter again. Let's highlight the things that made the sign flip. Multiplying by -3 to both sides is what made the sign flip. And then once again, I'm going to grab my pencil and I'm going to say sign flipped. Super, super important. Okay, let's go down to the next one. Let's see, what's going on with my W? I'm going to rewrite it first of all so I can keep things nice and neat. W is being multiplied by -0.7. The opposite of being multiplied by -0.7 would be to divide by -0.7 to both sides. This is where the alarm should be going off. Boop, boop, boop. We got to flip the sign, okay? So these two cancel out, makes one whole, which is what we want. But now flip that sign. Now let's go do the math over here. -4.2 divided by -0.7. First of all, can I ever have a decimal in the denominator? No. So I need to boot that out one place to get it into a whole number. But if I do it to the bottom, I have to do it to the top. So now I'm going to rewrite this. This is -42 divided by -7. First of all, I know that two negatives make a positive. So my answer is going to be positive. 42 divided by 7 is 6. 6 times 7 is, come on, you shoe, 42. And we keep that flipped sign. And now we can graph it. It'll be a closed circle because it is an or equal to problem. And read it from the variable. W is bigger. Okay, so go to 6. W is anything bigger, so it's that way. Grab that highlighter. Let's highlight the things that made the sign flip. It was when we multiplied by -0.7 to both sides. And that's what made the sign flip. You have to be so aware at all times if you are multiplying or dividing by negatives. All right, last problem. K is being divided by -0.25. So the opposite of being divided by -0.25 would be to multiply by -0.25 to both sides. But let's go ahead and rewrite it so that we have this nice and neat in our notes. Okay, so we need to multiply both sides by -0.25. Multiply by -0.25. The alarm should be going off in your heads. We just multiplied both sides by a negative, which means my sign is going to flip. These ones would cancel out, which would leave me with just K. But now we got some bonus math to go do over here. 36 times -0.25. I know my answer is going to be negative because 1 negative times a positive is still a negative. So I'm going to do that real quick. And then I'm just going to go over here with a different color. I'm going to go do this bonus math, okay? So over here we've got 36 and 0.25. And we're timesing. 6 times 5 is 30. 5 times 3 is 15, 16, 17, 18. Placeholder 0. 2 times 6 is 12. 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 more is 7. Add it all up. 8, 9, 10. 7, 8, 9. Now, this is the final step. How many decimal places did we mess with? 2 places, so which means we go 2 places here. So my answer is not 900. My answer is 9. So I'm going to go back over to my actual problem. I said it was going to be negative. It's going to be negative 9. Now we can graph it. Go to negative 9. It'll be a closed circle because it's an or equal to problem. And then go ahead and read it. Its k is bigger. So it's going to be anything that way. Grab your highlighter. Let's highlight the things that made my sign flip. It was when we multiplied by negative 0.25 to both sides. And then highlight that sign that flipped. Sign flipped again. I don't have any room to write sign flipped, but that's okay. We know sign flipped, sign flipped, sign flipped. Flip your signs when you multiply or divide by a negative. The next thing I'm going to have you guys do is get a practice page from the sub. We're going to work on practice page 4.3. It'll be this one right here. So in 4.3's practice page, it's very similar to what we just did in our notes. All you're doing is solving the equality. So you get the variable by itself, and then you just graph the solution, okay? I do want to kind of just walk through it real quick and just talk about the ones where the sign's going to flip. You can actually just tell if the sign's going to flip by looking at the thing that you're trying to get away from the variable. For example, number 1, the thing that I'm trying to get away from my variable is 6. 6 is positive, which means that positive 6 is not going to create the sign flipping. Number 2, the thing that I'm trying to get away from my variable is that 4, and that 4 is positive, so it's not going to cause my sign to flip. Number 3, the thing that I'm trying to get away from my variable is negative 20. That's going to cause the sign to flip because I'm going to be dividing by negative 20 to both sides, which, oh my gosh, if you look at this, this is such a nice problem. Negative 8 divided by negative 2 is positive 4. Oops, I just gave you an answer. Anyway, that's going to cause a sign to flip because you multiply or divided both sides by a negative. Number 4, that's going to cause a sign to flip. Number 5, that's going to cause your sign to flip. Number 6, this one's tricky. A lot of kids are going to say, oh, look, negative 8, it's going to cause the sign to flip. But remember, it's the thing next to the variable that's going to cause the sign to flip. This is positive 1.6. If I'm dividing both sides by positive 1.6, that's not going to cause the sign to flip. Even if this one's negative, I didn't divide by a negative to both sides. So yeah, 6 won't flip. Now 7 is another one that's tricky. This is saying negative r over 4. Give your negative to the 4. If I give the negative to the 4, then I'm going to have to multiply each side by negative 4, which is going to cause the sign to flip. Same thing on 8. Give that negative to the 5, and then it'll cause your sign to flip. Number 9, I'm going to have to get rid of this negative 0.3 away from my variable. That's going to cause the sign to flip. Number 10, to win a game, you need at least 45 points. Well, that sounds like an inequality just right there. To win a game, you need at least 45 points. So can I have more than 45 points? Yes. Could I have 45 points? Yes. So that sounds like an inequality right there. Each question is worth 3 points. Write and solve an inequality that represents the number of questions you need to answer to correctly win the game. So to win the game, you need 45 points. Each question is worth 3 points. So I think I need to put a 3 right here. 3 times my winnings, or, you know, questions. I could rewrite it as this: 3 correct questions, so maybe a 3Q, is going to be greater than or equal to 45. Now you just have to get Q by itself. You would divide each side by 3, and then you'll have Q is greater than or equal to, and then whatever you get right here, that's how many questions you need to answer correctly to win the game. All right, guys, go ahead and work on this practice page, turn it in, make sure you put your names. There's so many no names when I usually come back, and I will see you guys on Monday.